Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Not Morning Poop. Ugh. Let's try that one more time.
Best
Outtakes.
intro ever. Take two.
Let's do it live. All right. Hello and welcome to. Oh, all right. I guess I have to wait for Laura to stop laughing before I can do my intro.
Sorry.
It's okay. Laughter's good. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Not Morning People, a show where my friends Chris, Laura, and myself talk about life, technology, and share stories. Today we'll be joined by Emma Barnes. Today's topic is empowering children to write their own stories. First, let's start with some introductions. Chris?
Me first. Hi, I'm Chris. I'm a dad and a software developer here in North Carolina, USA.
And Laura?
I am a mom of 2 adult children at this point, and I am a taxonomist.
My name's Nick, and I am a software developer, a father of a 10-year-old, and a husband and a maker, and I wear a lot of hats, as you can tell by how ratty my hair is. And Emma, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. I am, I guess, a publisher turned coder, also a mother, and I suppose professional context switcher, really, because we all wear a lot of hats, don't we?
Yes.
And I live in the post-Brexit failed state of Britain, your cheerful local pandemic variant factory. Happy to be here.
So tell us how you really feel, Emma. I mean, you don't have to veil your feelings towards.
I'll warm up.
All
We'll get
about
there.
not sugarcoating it here, Nicholas.
That's okay. All right, so let's start with what are you reading? I will go first. So I am reading Magical Misfits, which my video is reversed, but you guys can get the deal. So that is a young adult novel written by Neil Patrick Harris, and it's a series. And my son absolutely loved them. They were recommended by his librarian, and he started reading the first one and was like, "Okay, I'm just all of them now. Get them off the shelf." And he loved it so much that he wanted to read it again. Every night we read before he goes to bed. So now we are reading it together, and it's really well written, and it's interesting to see that jump from when children's books go from being like powdery fluff of like, and everything was rosy and great, and oh no, we might get in trouble. Like that's the big thing is, oh my God, mom and dad might get us in trouble, to like, oh my God, we might actually get hurt. You know, there might be real danger. And it's interesting to see that transition happen. One, just over time. And then two, by over time, I mean like, 50 years ago, there was not this young adult genre, and that didn't necessarily happen in books. But also just as, children transition from being that 5-6-year-old to that, tween age. So yes, that's what I'm enjoying. Laura?
I'm reading something completely different. I am reading The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is about a man trying to, I guess, claim a life essentially during slavery. He escapes, and the novel is about what happens after that. And it was good timing because Ta-Nehisi Coates just started teaching at Howard, and that was all over the headlines in the U.S. So far this week.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was so glad that the UNC professor that was a huge
Yes.
loss for us here landed in such an amazing spot, and it's such a big win for Howard for both of them to be
Exactly.
starring professors there.
Yep.
I'm next, right? Reading?
Yeah, go for
So
it.
I recently subscribed to HBO for a month just because there was like everyone keeps telling me about all these shows on HBO. So I'm committed to watching every one of the shows in a month. So I get my $15 worth. But one of the shows that I had heard of was this one called Exterminate All the Brutes. It's like
Yes.
it's a 4-part documentary basically about how humans are evil. I mean, the subject is colonialism and
Yep.
like how it's happened and why it happens and how we keep repeating it and how recent history is showing us that like we're doing it again in so many different places. And it's like reading people's history of the United States, right? Like it's kind of like pulling back the veil of why do we celebrate 4th of July? And what does that mean to Black people in America? And what does that mean to indigenous people in America? Anyway, blah, blah, blah. But in over the course of the 4 parts, it's highly recommended. I would see it. The director is kind of also the narrator, and he mentions a lot of different books that inspired him, including some of the ones written by his colleagues about history and colonialism and whatever. But he also mentions Joseph Conrad a lot when he's talking about colonialism, effects in different parts of Africa. And I realized as he was talking about it, there's a few short stories that he mentions in there that I had never heard of. And then I realized I had this gap in my library, which was the complete short stories of Joseph Conrad. So I went and ordered a copy, and I've started to work my way through those stories. And it's all very good.
That is such an amazing series.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just 4 episodes, but oh my God, it's incredible. I could not stop recommending it after I watched it. And one of my team members at work was like, I tried to watch it. It was so heavy. I'm like, yeah, well, if you need to take it in small doses, go ahead. But please watch it. It's so good.
Yeah. I mean, yes, it's certainly one of those where you kind of have to like hold your eyes open a little bit because it hurts. It hurts to see it. But
exactly.
Anyway, what about you, Emma? What are you reading?
I have my pile here. This is a classic internet purchase because you see it. This is the 7 Basic Plots. And you think, yeah, that sounds good. And then it arrives and it's like, oh my goodness, I haven't got time for 1,000 pages. Yeah. But this is really good. I home educate my 12-year-old as well as doing all the work. So he's at the stage now where I'm hoping that he starts drawing lines between things. And so to be able to draw a line between Jaws and Homeric myths and Simpsons episodes and whatever fine book he's reading at the moment is it's absolutely captivating. And there really are only 7 basic plots. But I'm only about a quarter of the way through, so presumably more lines will be drawn. But that's a really good one. And all of my books are primarily educational, actually, because I'm reading this amazing book by Kate Clanchy as well at the moment. She's on Twitter and mainly posts the poems that her poetry writing group post, and they're the finest poems that you will ever have the privilege of reading. And this is her secret way to get children to write incredible poetry.
Can you tell us the title for the podcast?
Yeah, thank you.
For those
it's
without
called How to Grow Your Own Poem by Kate Clanchy.
Thank you.
And her Twitter thing, because there's a useful bit of metadata in the front, is at Kate Clanchy 1. And I would strongly recommend a follow there. You won't be disappointed. Oh my goodness, this pile is huge. I'm also rereading Learning React, and each time I have got to page 24 this time and thought, yes, this is fine, I can do this. I'm mainly a Ruby and Rails developer, and JavaScript I've come fairly recently to, as in the last 5 years, I suppose. And React is the latest flavour of that. But then the books I really wanted to show you are these incredible ones. I'll just vaguely wave them. It's a series from Dorling Kindersley. And they've gone into the textbook market, and it's an absolute joy to see them bringing their incredible layout capabilities to something that is actually, children have to sit down and learn and read. And it's such a breath of fresh air because the textbook market, I don't know about for you, but in the UK is dire. I mean, at this sort of age, the stuff that we've got is turgid and strangely written and boring. And these are
Right.
absolutely wonderful. I'm really enjoying.
I
Really
have to say that
enjoying.
I enjoy when you kind of like simmer and rage on Twitter about the curriculum options that you have.
I'm
And when
always
you mentioned those
balancing
books,
time.
those DK series, I actually like
Yeah.
immediately ordered them because I was like, oh my god, these look amazing.
But yeah, it's wonderful. And what a lovely bit of innovation, you know, building on your core brand of beautiful layout of interesting information, and then bringing it to this whole new market. And it's really good. I'm very invested in it. And I don't have any kind of skin in the game because they're not a customer, although I will make them a customer, I'm sure, at one point. And I don't know anyone there. I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing they've done.
Aw.
So, yeah.
When
No,
when
but
you
no.
mentioned the seven basic plots, the other book that came to mind, I'm sure you've heard of, is the one called The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. So that's not exactly a
Right.
12-year-old book, but it is one of those that like draws a line from Odysseus right to Luke Skywalker, and talks
Yeah,
about like
absolutely.
the sort of the basic plots in his way from a heroic epic poem point of view.
Amazing. This is the thing with educating your own child, whether you're doing it full time or whether you're doing it in partnership with a school or not. You have to be there with the facts at your fingers in the moment. The moment they mention something that might be broadly interesting, that you've got no time to go and research something. You have to be able to recite the entire Odyssey if that's what's necessary.
Although it is
Yes.
good to have like one of these around too, so that when my kids are like, how many times in Congress has there been a filibuster of a hell? And I'm like,
Absolutely.
40,
Did you ever
43 times.
Did you ever read Neil Stephenson's The Diamond Age years back?
I have
He
not. What? Tell us
Nope.
about it.
I can barely remember the plot. It's kind of, I think it was called Cyberpunk. It was fabulous. And there was a bit in it, there was a long running subplot where there was a girl and she had a handheld device. And I think it was called the Young Lady's Primer or the young child's something or other. And this was, years before the internet. And it was, it was advice where you wander around the fields. It was sort of set in a futuristic Victorian-esque society. And that was her governess, her tutor. And we did
wow.
exactly the same with a phone around the fields here.
Also, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Absolutely. And do not panic. It's a very, very sensible message for our age.
Although I must
Exactly.
say, at least The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy gave you correct information. You didn't open it and it told you not to panic, and then the next ad told you to panic. So someone highly curated that and came up with a book that
Yes.
was actually useful.
Just find it fascinating how basically all of the golden age of science fiction, like they predicted time travel and wormholes and alien races and intergalactic civilizations, but like nobody could imagine the internet. Like in all of Isaac Asimov's books, like scientists are walking over to the shelf and pulling big books off the shelf and like referring to books
Exactly.
and then like picking up the telephone to call Mars and stuff like that. It's just kind of weird that there's this basic information layer and it very rarely shows up. One other book like Ender's Game, Orson Scott Card, I don't know when that came out, but it was pre-internet and like the main character in there has a
Yeah.
little iPad. And it's one of the few cases where there was like a handheld computer accessing, some web of information.
Yeah, I mean, they're
Anyway.
in sci-fi, and if you even look back, I mean, if you take a look at, even non-sci-fi, if you look like Borges, like the way that he spoke about the infinite library of infinite things, and like it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a foreign concept that no one ever thought about. It's just, I mean, all things in sci-fi, they want you to imagine that it's real. So picking up a telephone is something people can all relate to. And then what happens afterwards is sort of magic and mystical. And oh my God, there's a video attached to it. Because, I mean, can you imagine reading a sci-fi that talked about everything that wasn't based in a reality that exists today? It would either like completely blow your mind, or you'd be like, I can't even grasp this. So that's the struggle with writing or reading sci-fi.
It's
Yeah.
just so cool to think of, like, what are the science fiction-y things that will happen in 20 years that we cannot possibly imagine now. Like, what we imagine is always like somehow within the paradigm of what we know now. Like in Asimov again, like there was computers, but they were all like client server. They were just like much bigger supercomputers, like Univac, right? And you'd put in a card, and it's just like bigger versions of what he already knew was real, as opposed to some, the sci-fi that's cool is sometimes stuff that comes out that like talks about something in a way that you've never thought of before, like Solaris. Just kind of an interesting, like aliens, but in a way that we could never comprehend them at all. Anyway, I digress.
Well, that's a good lead in to our next topic, which is what are you looking forward to this week? Or I guess technically it's the next 2 weeks, because we do an episode every 2 weeks. So I'm not sure who is ready, but whoever is ready can go first. Or I'll put someone on the spot.
I can go.
Go.
So I have two kids, one who is almost 18 and the other one is 14 and a half. And 2 Fridays ago, the younger one was like finally, 100% vaccinated, and was able to like do normal stuff. So like a couple weeks ago, we went to a restaurant and we went to an outdoor movie, and he's kind of like easing himself back into like doing things without a mask on, or sort of with a mask on. And he was such a diligent mask wearer during the whole actual pandemic and whatever, but not sort of coming out and doing some normal stuff. And so this next weekend I'm gonna take them to the mall to do like some school shopping, which will be fun for both of us, because the younger one's just about to start high school. And kind of right now he's just like, he wears like rainbow colored Crocs and Dungeons and Dragons t-shirts, and like all of which is fine, let your flag fly. But I'm like, why don't we get you like just a couple, maybe just like a couple young adult items.
Yeah.
like a shirt with some buttons. Like, maybe let's just try it, first impressions. So it'll be fun to just kind of like bounce around a mall and act like normal people, with the whole family being vaccinated. So I'm looking forward to that.
Isn't it weird that you look forward to being normal? Whereas 3 years ago, you'd be like, I don't want to be normal at all. Or at least I don't want to be normal at all.
Or like, go to the mall again, go to a movies again. Like, this is also boring. And now it's also momentous to be like, let's all sit at a restaurant around a table together.
Yeah.
Yep.
But in a way, that's good too.
My looking forward to thing is very similar. I'm looking forward to a haircut.
But your hair's so wonderful.
Well, it does need to be maintained. So, I'm hitting the salon next week, and hopefully can get a mani-pedi worked in there as well.
Nice.
Just, basic stuff that we used to do all the time that now is so special.
Yeah.
A little bit of pampering goes a long way.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have...
How about you, Emma?
Oh, yeah. You ready to go?
Why not? I am also looking forward to doing something plain. Since the beginning of the summer, we decided at work we would move to a 4-day week. So I get a really nice kind of almost semi-structured weekend because there's so much of it now. So on Fridays we do a thing, and the thing that we are doing this is so funny. We are going to a place with a walled garden, and we will stand and we will look at the wall and walk in the garden, and that is the thing we are doing. It's going to be brilliant. Can't wait.
That sounds great.
It's just a place down the road, but it requires real sort of conscious thought of, okay, the government are deciding to reduce the the mandate for people to wear masks. So we're going to wear masks, right? And we're going to go in a time of the day when there's few people around, in the time of the week. It's just everything requires conscious thought where it previously didn't. So that'll be good. And I'm also looking forward to this afternoon, actually, because this week I've been pair programming with my colleague, and it's just brilliant. I really value it as a way to learn and produce at the same time, and share a little bit of solidarity, and have a conversation rather than just staring at a screen. So I'm really enjoying that prospect as well.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So I've got two quick things. So my son has spent his first week at sleepaway camp this week. So I pick him up on Friday, and I'm excited to hear about his experience. And this Sunday, I got roped into doing a craft fair. I shouldn't say necessarily roped into it, but it was again one of those things of like, oh hey, there's a craft fair. Do you want to do it? I'm like, sure. So I've put together a whole bunch of items for that, and we actually have a tent this time. I think we're gonna set up a second table.
Wow.
It's weird. It's like not necessarily getting real. But I had my first day yesterday. I took off of work and spent 9 hours straight making. And I was like, okay, you know what? If I had to, I could do this as a job. I don't have any plans to do that. I hope it doesn't necessarily come to that. But it is interesting, and it's been a fun journey.
Very cool.
Okay, so let's dive right into our topic, which is empowering children or kids, or does it not matter? Or like what's the difference? What are the differences in those two words mean? I guess. I don't know. I have a feeling all of you have an interesting perspective on that.
When I was an actual child, I remember my dad was a Presbyterian minister, and I remember him coming back from a youth group meeting with the teenagers, and he was talking about like, oh, the kids this and the kids that, and of course I'm like, what, 7? And I'm looking at him, I'm like, Dad, those are not kids, because to me they were adults. So I've grown up with this understanding of kids just basically meaning anybody younger than you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that my two are right in that transition between adults and childish things or whatever, where there's like just 6 months ago the younger one would play with action figures in his room, by himself, and like now like it's just it's gotten a lot quieter in there, or it's the sound is different. He's like zooming and gaming with friends and stuff. So
right.
So I think a lot of it is just like how they're choosing to spend their time or something like that, and like not wanting to hang out with me, of course. Like I'm way less interesting nowadays.
I feel like the line is like 10. I think if you're under 10, you are a child, and then a kid is under 18. I mean, I'm drawing arbitrary lines here, but I feel like if you called a teenager a child, they would not like it. If you called them a kid, they may or may not like it, but I feel like that that's how that represents to me. But yeah, so finishing the topic, so it is empowering kids or children to write stories. So with that said, so Emma, I'd like to kind of open this up to you to tell us maybe some of the things you've done and some of the things that you're excited about in this space.
Yes, thank you very much. I should give more of a fuller bio than just ranting about the government. So I started out fine working in normal jobs, and then I had the first of many moments of reflection and started an independent publishing company called Snowbooks, and that was in 2003. That led to a software company called Consonance, which is was originally a way to make Snowbooks work, because there were no systems that I could bear to look at, that I could use or afford, in fact, to run the business. So I had to learn programming in order to make Snowbooks viable, and then kind of accidentally went to market with that software, which is now used all around the world by very much larger publishers than tiny little Snowbooks. So our largest publisher has about 500,000 product records, and we send out millions upon millions of Onyx records every day. We manage royalties for some really large companies with millions of sales records. So yes, that's this slight trajectory there. And then parallel to that, maybe, or as another sensible piece of linearity, I have a side project which is called Make Our Book. And this ties into the idea that as I was becoming a mother and parenting that child, I was really keen for him to not just be so focused on the curriculum, as they all have to be. Obviously we all, as creative parents, want to extend that love of words and pictures and beauty into our children. And so one of the earliest projects that we did was making little books. That kind of snowballed when he got to reception. I worked with his school back then to do a book for their class. And it was a little thing of poems and poetry, and I laboriously typeset it in InDesign. And it went down really, really well. And they said, I'd love to do this again next year. I thought, I'm not doing another 400-piece anthology in InDesign again. Jeeps, we'll have to get real. So wrote an app, we have the hammer, we write the app.
Right.
Stupidly.
As you do, yes.
And so then, I created this Make Our Book Rails web app. And now it produces things of, this is a chunky one as well, beautiful things like this. So children and teachers write their words in, they upload their pictures, magical programming typesets the thing, and then we get these
lovely,
beautiful books out. And I've just had this huge flurry of them in the last few weeks, because they are a fantastic way for children to process whatever's just happened, whatever is currently happening. Lots of books called lockdown literature. Lots of, in fact, this is an absolutely beautiful cover that one of the children did.
They're very Penguins classics.
Excuse me, I do not know to what you refer.
I mean, they're very Barnesian. They're very
it's much more like
Barnesy
it.
design.
Yeah. Thank you. So what was the question again?
You answered it.
Yes. There we go. Marvelous. Yeah. So I'm invested in the idea of giving children a creative outlet in a world that demands so much of them that is to be marked. And this is the great thing about this. You can't mark a story, or there is no facility within my software, certainly, for anyone to mark anything. It's an elevation of writing. It's a way to hopefully give children the idea that they are as justified as anyone in creating art and having it made permanent. That thing about bits of paper, I don't know what it's like in America, but bits of paper coming back and going on the fridge and then gracefully sliding into the bin,
Exactly.
But, there's incredible work that deserves to be made permanent forever, as well as it being a lovely snapshot of where they are in time. And it's been a hell of a year just proofreading these things, let alone these children going through what they've gone through. Extremely expressive stuff.
Beautiful.
Right? And very moving. I mustn't cry. So, yeah, really, really lovely to find something technological that I can do. I like being alone typing. Something that I can do to enable children to, I guess, feel part of things as much as anything. You know, that we mentioned like the ranking of kids and children, and then presumably adults and infants. But you know, that spectrum of growth, children become meaningful humans really early on, and there's a lot of aspects of the world that don't really recognize that. So this,
Right.
I wonder
Yeah.
how
Oh,
it's
that is
changed
amazing.
over time, as far as like when I was a kid, I'm 48
Mm,
or whatever, like the opportunities as somebody who was creative and drew pictures and wrote stories or whatever, like the opportunities for me to like get in a book like the ones that you just showed, Emma, were like about zero out of 100. Right? Like there just weren't
yeah,
opportunity. There was like Highlights magazine, or maybe Stone Soup
Right.
it existed at some point or whatever. But old
yeah,
school traditional publishing. But like now, with apps like yours and others,
yeah,
even in my kids, like there were like kits you could order on Amazon where you could, it's like a bookmaking kit, and you would like have your kid draw on some pages, and then you'd send it off somewhere, and then they'd send you back 5 copies of a hardcover book. Like the opportunities now to just be like, I'm a kid, I'm a published author, I'm a kid, I'm doing public
yeah,
stuff, and like that's all great. But I do also wonder, like, kids now know that like they can write something, and it's not just private for their family, and it's not just private for their class assignment or whatever, but it's like it's the same like TikTok, Instagram phenomenon. Like I can just sign up for something, and then I'm like, what's my question is like, how does that change how kids write? Whether they're, are they being honest because they
mm,
know it's going to be automatically public for public consumption, that kind of thing. It's just kind of open-ended question of
Well,
like how that changes how they see what they're doing and what they share and how they share it. What do
to
you think?
to
yeah.
interject a question in there as well, just because it'll follow up and clarify, the books created, are they publicly available, or is that just available for their own private purchase and private distribution?
Or both?
Left as left to the desire of the school, because it's usually a school that's arranging these projects. Sometimes it's a home education group, and really cleaving closely to GDPR requirements, which are actually very sensible and common sense. Do people give their consent to have their information shared? 100% so far have been private, despite having the option. And I think that frees up the children and the adults who are helping them to create rather honest work. So, some of them are ridiculously honest. I dread to think what the parents will say when they see their children saying, I've had the most awful time and nobody will listen to me, and all
Yeah.
in beautiful like stanzas. But
Well, I mean, and as Chris pointed out, so much of everything is public. And
yeah,
that's been my son is 10 and wants to be on social media and things like that. I'm like, you're not ready for it, because everything you say now, again, there are a whole lot of accounts that end up in obscurity and never get seen and nobody ever cares. But if you happen to be one of those that you're lucky or unlucky enough to be seen and be shared and things like that doesn't go away, and that can follow you forever. And I don't think adults are ready for that sort of power. So I think, I can completely understand the 100% private, because keeping it within your local community or even within your school, like that's a big place, but it's extremely tiny as opposed to the whole world and the future.
yes, absolutely. I mean,
Or your
my expertise.
Oh no, go ahead. You talk.
My expertise in children extends purely to my own child, and the rest is all luck and happenstance. But he has displayed, at the age of 12, has displayed no interest in public exposure. Would be horrified at the idea of anything of his going on the internet, which I'm just about to do. It's funny, isn't it? You know, little bits like this, and this is a tiny little book. He did this for our Christmas present to the family
Oh,
for this year, and even that was quite a lot of exposure, to show people who he understands and who he knows, a sort of expression of his work. I've just read the acknowledgements, which I don't think I've ever seen before, which is quite funny. Acknowledgements: special thanks to my dear mother for being so patient, no matter what I throw at her. She has encouraged me to power on through, and boy, has she done it well.
wow.
Aw.
So, that's not how children write. That there is an awareness there that their writing is going into some sort of public domain, some sort of scrutiny, and that's not. It's a really good point you raise. It's not truthful writing, but then what writing ever is? Is this them embarking on a lifetime of moderating one's language for the audience?
Right.
It's
Oh,
also
wow.
giving them the opportunity to, because I don't think kids necessarily grasp the whole internet. So,
No.
when they think of, I want to be on TikTok, things like that, I think they think there's like two separations. One is my local little group of friends that I'm going to, be silly with. And then there's this internet famous group of people that I'm going to follow and never necessarily interact with and that I might want to aspire to be, and there's, kind of that view of it. But that's not the reality of it. So again, having that control over, I know where this is going. I know who is going to see this, possibly, but I also know that it's not going to be zero. It's not my personal diary that is, I can write whatever I want. I can just like there's some level of finality to it, I think, because it's going to sit on your bookshelf next to a professional, well-written, edited book. So you want some level of competence there. So at least that's how I would view it.
Yeah. I mean, the teachers understand that, but the children, before, you have to see something before you believe it. And it's the second round of books where I expect the writing is a little more deliberate from the child's point of view. But this is the crazy thing. They have no notion, they have no sense in which their work might be persistent. Because a lot of children's work is ephemeral and transient and done for odd reasons, done so that the people who build careers around their progress have data.
That's a good point.
Which blows my mind a lot of the time.
Again, it's kind of writing for the system as opposed to a free expression.
Now, from what you just said,
Yeah.
and because I know we've got some metadata junkies here, do you track the authors of individual sections of the book?
I've decided to make that a string, not a contact record. So
Okay.
no, so there's no sense in which there's an entity in our database called Rowan Barnes who has many pieces. That's a dumb line of text. There's no tracking anywhere on it.
So if I was graduating high school and I wanted to say, give me all of the content I wrote since kindergarten, and I want to make my journey book, that is not something I could easily do right now.
You see, doesn't that just sound so compelling? And I've had all of these wild ideas of, in year 6, we'll do a remix and we'll take all of the, the year 6 now cohorts work throughout and we'll remix it into a final anthology. And I think on reflection, that is a really interesting example of us as developers think of the cool things we could do and rushing to do it and perhaps not always considering closely enough the human repercussions. Just because we can does not mean we should.
It's also the power of metadata. If you have the metadata, then you have the option to do that. You can always not enable that. You don't have to code it.
Yes.
But if you don't have the metadata, it becomes, uh-oh.
Right, exactly. exactly. Do you even want to start down the path of that possibility? I remember at one of the Tools of Change conferences back in the 2010s or whatever. There was a guy there from, I want to say, Saudi Arabia, talking about discoverability. And I mean, because that was always such a huge topic, like getting found as an author or getting your books found as a publisher. And he was saying, well, the problem with metadata and identifiers, like ISBNs or what have you, is that you can be found. And in a situation where the government can't be trusted to act in a just manner once something is found, maybe you don't want to be found. So there's an upside to not being discoverable. There's an upside to not having the metadata or the identifiers or what have you, for reasons of personal privacy and personal safety, which, for kids is as a parent, that's your job.
And
is
something that we do a lot of work on at work. I mean, we're a publishing management system, so you wouldn't think this would come into it, but it does. We do a lot of work on technical literacy within publishing. And we are an interested party in that, because the more technically literate our customers, the more fun we can have, the more integrations we can do, the more they can use our GraphQL APIs, the more beautiful things we can write, etc. But it's also a moral issue to ensure that people, whether they're publishers or parents or the general populace, understand the repercussions of what they're blithely signing away. And particularly with children who, may not have parents who are technically literate enough to be able to guide them and make these calls for them. We shouldn't preload children with I certainly don't want any role in preloading children with obligations to have a public data cache before they've even, come of age. So there's a body of work that still needs to be done to increase general technical literacy. And it's being very close to the UK curriculum now, because I've sort of taken over responsibility for that and I'm no longer outsourcing it to schools. It really surprises me how little awareness there is, or little that there's not going to be particularly strong outcomes based on the national curriculum here for children emerging into the world, truly understanding the implications of what we're talking about here.
Well, and so GDPR comes in really interestingly here. And I have to admit, I am in the spirit of the law. I think it's really well written and comes from the right place. America has not been as accepting. There are some companies that have just said, well, since we have to comply with GDPR, we might as well kind of offer the same thing everywhere, and that's great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I imagine, in a school system, so let's take, for example, keeping that body of work. When that child graduates, when that student graduates, let's just say they're 18 or they're at age of consent when they graduate. They would have an option right then and there to say, I would like my works removed. And under GDPR, they full have that right. They could also say, hey, I would like my works to be attributed to me. In which case they could essentially, they could choose to make it public or not, but basically they own the rights to that. Or they could say, maybe I wish to have this available as under a pseudonym. So I have access to it and it's there, but it's not necessarily findable because, again, it was stuff that you did under 18, which at least in the US is protected by laws that you can't necessarily can't be held against you, sort of.
Right.
And it would be great to have those controls. I mean, obviously, it all comes down to who's owning that, because if it's Facebook owning that, nothing ever goes away at that point, and who has access to it is unknown. But it becomes difficult because where, like, how do you draw that moral line? And there's, for me, there's always that juggle between creating value but also respecting privacy, because just simply, okay, it's there, we print it, and then it's gone, is throwing away a lot in attempts to be super about privacy. But is there maybe a better balance? So I don't know. Obviously, these are very difficult things, but I'm interested in your thoughts, or at least how you've tackled this, or if you've tackled this.
I was going to wait for Laura to pitch in, because, a lot of this is about, the tagging up data can actually protect it. And
Yes.
tagging it up badly can do the opposite. So we mustn't just sort of leap to the idea that storing data is bad. Good Lord, no. Storing it and managing it at the appropriate level of detail for the task at hand is the important thing. I think most of this just comes down to the need for as many people as possible to be able to think through the ramifications of what we're doing, and to behave well. It's so interesting, isn't it, that the tech world seems to be divided into goodies and baddies. And you're right, you wouldn't necessarily trust Facebook to store children's records. You want to be able to manage that quite closely. So I feel like the most important thing is for us to get as many people as possible to do, this now sounds like I'm leaping, but get as many people as possible to do some programming, because it's only by getting your hands dirty and rolling your sleeves up and doing some that these questions start to become baked into your bones, and you start to understand how badly data can be stored. Without understanding anything like this, one assumes in a domain that you don't know anything about that things are good and managed well and competent. No, things can be very, very bad indeed.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
yes.
I feel like in middle school now they should swap out. Like when I was in middle school, we had a class called home economics, which was like, like it literally was a class on like how to set the table and how to cook some basic dishes and how to we sewed pillows and stuff like that. And like maybe now, in addition to that, there should be one about like, the information literacy, like at least
Right.
part of it, right? Like what happens from the moment you like hit post to like all the machinations between like where does it go first and where does it go next and what happens to this information and who are all the
I
players
totally agree.
I
in
mean,
your information.
I think it falls under life skills in a way.
Yeah.
Just as I mean, when I was growing up, we had home ec, we also had shop, right? So
Right.
I know how to use a drill because I learned when I was 12. Just like basic life skills, which supposedly, the whole thing in the US at least, and I imagine in the UK there's probably a similar strain of this, that the parents should be teaching this. This should not be, the province of schools. And honestly, there's got to be some baseline of survival skills. And Emma, that's what I think, is so great about homeschooling in a lot of ways, because you can make the choices to have that, set that baseline of life skills as part of the overall educational approach.
I mean, I would never have done it if it hadn't been for this darned pandemic. But it has all shaken out to be, the more I think about it and the more I become directly invested in the outcomes, because, it'll be me that gets the chop if things go wrong. The more I think, how does one, it's a hackneyed expression, but how does one prepare children for a future which we cannot possibly imagine? Comes back to, we were talking about when we were talking about our books, we don't know what the radical invention of the future will be. So there is a huge benefit in exposing children to difficult problems that don't have a neat and tidy solution, and that have good and evil at their hearts. You know, it comes back to my 7 basic plots. You know, the hero's journey, and there's usually a baddie, and you have to vanquish them. That is an interesting aspect of the modern era. Things seem to be binary, divided into goodies and baddies. Where do you stand? How do you navigate this? How do you spot a baddie? Don't they sound just like the goodies? It's very interesting, and you can't do that in a physics lesson or a chemistry lesson. You know, you need a lot of time in the week to, I mean, maybe it comes under the more old-fashioned subjects of rhetoric or debate or philosophy or that which gets worked out in the playground, and you have to sort of learn it from first principles by interacting with other humans. There's a lot of soft stuff that I think will be more and more important, and you know, metadata comes under it. Metadata is world encapsulated in a database.
So Emma, to bring back
Absolutely.
what we're talking about
Absolutely.
now to earlier, like in your app, make our book.
Make our book, yeah.
Like, is it more that like students just create stuff and then like pass it off to the app and then magic happens and a book shows up, or are they involved in the editing and the copy editing and the process of like I'm making this also? Is it both of those things?
Yeah, it is both of those things. It's been an interesting sort of iterative journey, because as I say, I'm not an educator. I am a mother with, you know, opinions. But I know a well typeset book when I see it. So the end result is an appropriate thing of beauty. So really, I've left it as an exercise to the enabling adults to say what do they need from the app that will help them deliver against their objectives. And so features have been developed in concert with that. There have been a few schools who've been 2 feet in with understanding the profit and loss, which I think is fabulous and you know, great to give children a tangible example of what I can't just take my £10. I have to pay the printer. Oh, this is awful. You know, there's a number of different aspects of different curricula that you can bring through a book: sales and marketing, design, layout, white space. Precious few children are explicitly taught what to look for in a good font, a good typeface. And so that's a lovely example to bring that into their design and technology work, to look hard, to appreciate the curve and the straight line and the white space and that which is left out. So various educators, and it is primarily in the UK at the moment, various have been interested in different aspects. There's been a rather nice particular part of it, which is the older children have typed in the younger children's work. And so the older children get to, show how great their typing is coming on, and it doesn't take them 7 lessons to type in a 14-line poem. They can rattle it out. So that really, the reason that the project has done so well in the last year is this enabling of community and this sense that we are building something together, and different people can bring different skills to the table, and we can create something of beauty that we can all be proud of, and we can all use to process this shared trauma that we've gone through. But we can use to celebrate the good things and to explicitly write out that which we're proud of and that which we do value. Like we were saying about going to a shop for the weekend, and that's brilliant.
Right.
This has made children, given them a platform to appreciate what the little things that they have, which turn out to actually be the big things. It's the whole point.
Exactly.
That's
so wonderful.
What have you heard from kids about like the difference between them? Like they do all this digital work and then they end up with a physical thing offline versus doing digital work and ending up with like an online book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't ask a child a question and get a straight answer. It's just all
Right.
nonsense. But the experience I've seen of children who aren't mine, so they don't have to prove anything to me, this was before all of lockdown started, coming out of school, clutching dog-eared copies of the book that they did the previous year, which have been in the library. I mean, these and seeing it is quite moving, seeing their little faces, looking through the book for their friends' work. Their friends are their peers, and they love them, and here is evidence that they matter.
Yes.
So I just want to quickly break in. So we're approaching an hour, but I think this is wonderful conversation. So here's what I'm going to ask. If you would like, we can continue this conversation further, but let's take a short, 1 minute break so that I can make this a 2-part. So would you all like to continue?
I have my pair programming at 2:30. I'm not too much longer.
I know. Yeah, exactly. I have to.
No, that's fine. I mean, we can always do this another day.
Work day now.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I hate to eat up a minute on this
Emma,
conversation.
I want to continue this.
Lovely.
Yeah. Well, maybe we just wrap it up there, I guess. I was just going to concur with you, Emma. Like I have both of my kids have written books, and the older one did a comic book several years ago, and then we actually, through the magic of just knowing some wonderful people, there was a comic book shop here that the older kid went to the shop and said, here's some books, will you sell these? And he was like, of course. We have to talk about the financial cut. What if you sell it for $1 and you get 75 cents and the shop gets a quarter? How about that? And so we actually had this comic book in this real comic book store, and I felt exactly what you were just talking about, clutching the book when, after it had been in the store a few weeks, Ben, my older one, was like, "Can we go to the comic book shop?" And I was like, "Of course." Is there something you're looking for that you want to read? And he was like, "I just want to look in the window and see my book there. I just want to see it." Knowing that it's real, and just being able to see it in a real place with real books next to Neil Gaiman, and did something in his head to just be like, I'm a real person. Look at what's in there. That's me.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah. So. I'm sure that's partly what gasses you up to program more stuff every day, right? Is
yes,
helping kids, facilitating kids having that feeling about themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
We do have a few minutes to wrap up. So everyone, I imagine this conversation will continue again. I don't know, maybe in 2 weeks if Emma will bless us with that. So wrapping things up, we'll do it really quick. So our last section is giving back, and we talk about a local or any charity we're going to give back to. So I will start, and mine is a little bit of a long game, but for my birthday every year, I try to do a charity event. And this year, my wife has agreed that there is a food drive happening 2 days after my birthday. So I will likely do a big barbecue/food drive as part of that. So my birthday will be bring something for the cookout and bring something for our local food drive. So that is what I'm picking as my giving back. Laura?
Well, I've been kind of just because of where I live and how hurricanes do hit Staten Island in ways they don't hit the rest of New York City. I've been kind of keeping an eye on this one that's going to hit Chris. And thinking about my mom used to be a project manager for Habitat for Humanity, and since we're entering hurricane season here, it kind of feels to me like they'll be in demand. So that is where my resources are going this week, this next 2 weeks.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I'm just I'm going to give to the North Carolina ACLU because you know we've got a
Yes.
super majority of Republicans here, and regardless of you know where you stand on the political spectrum, I'm one that likes to protect you know voting rights and not
Yes.
gerrymandered districts. And while we have not yet gotten some of the you know Texas style or Georgia style voting restriction laws yet, we
Right.
you know we have the votes to do just that. So
Mm.
I'm gonna try to support you know access to the polls.
Thank you. And Emma, again,
Awesome.
thank you so much for coming. This has been a wonderful conversation. And who will you be giving back
Can
to?
I? Well, yes. Two organisations this week. I was going to mention this anyway. We support as a company, and I support as well, bookdash.org, who are
Mm.
fabulous. Their mission is to make sure every child has 100 books by the age of 5. And it's
Wow.
audacious and grand and wonderful. And again, they use technology to make this happen. A wonderful bunch of people, efficient and brilliant. And I think that's a wonderful mixture. So bookdash.org is their website if you did feel swayed. And also today I'm going to give to the RNLI, which is the Royal National Lifeboat Association Institute, RNL, the people who go around the coast of the UK rescuing everybody. And they have really covered themselves in glory recently, and they get a lot of flack for this from certain people, but they rescue everyone, which should not be a grand political statement, but it is. And
Yes.
I'm grateful to them for doing that work. So I shall throw some money at them in gratitude.
Lovely.
Wonderful. And everybody else in whatever network you're consuming this wonderful media, feel free to comment who you have, what you're excited for this week, what you're reading, who you're giving back to. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for the wonderful chat, and I hope you've enjoyed today's show. As I said, we'll probably be continuing this conversation soon. It will be available on YouTube later today, as well as podcasts probably later today as well. So we'll see you all in 2 weeks. If anyone has anything they want to say on the way out, now's your chance.
Thanks
Just
for
a
listening.
big thank you to
Thank-
Emma.
Thank you very much for
Thanks to
having
Emma.
me.
Yes.
Love you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.